Apocalypto. I wanted to do a movie review for this. For a while, I actually just watched it just recently. I tried to watch it when I was younger, and I fell asleep like immediately because I thought it was boring. And of course, my mind wouldn't be mature enough to deal with what happens in the movie. But watching it now, and what I see happening now in the world right now, and then reading the book of Revelation, it makes a lot of sense to me. That was actually Mel Gibson, one of his last movies that he directed, I guess. Maybe it was his last movie that he directed. And Apocalypto, that word, I think that's just another way of, it has to do with Revelation, right? Is it a different translation of Revelation? I'm not sure. But anyway, or is it just apocalypse? The end of society, the end of civilization. So basically what the movie portrays is the end of the, unfortunately I don't remember if it was the Mayan or the Incan Empire. I mean, if you look, even if you take a basic history class, you'll hear about before, Christopher Columbus or um, any of those guys, any of the pilgrims or anything came over to America, um, there was a massive civilization. Lots of people, in these Mayan Incan tribes, also the Native Americans, all the tribes associated with them. But when we came over from Europe and came to this land, it caused a massive spreading of all the viruses that we had in Europe. We brought them over to the Americas. And I think disease killed 90%, maybe 95%. It's a very high number. We caused that because of all those viruses that we brought over from Europe. And so the movie is showing the events before that happened. Before we brought all these viruses and everybody just gets wiped out by all these different diseases. Though you do see a little kid and you see others with different types of viruses in the movie. And so maybe the virus is already spreading, I don't know. But anyway, the movie takes place from the perspective of a small tribe, small village, peaceful, just a little hunter-gatherer society, nice people. I mean, you gather all that in the opening scenes, that they seem like nice, kind people, just hunter-gatherers, peace-loving, love their families, very peaceful, not warlike, not looking to take advantage of other tribes in the area, just nice, peaceful. And they get conquered by a warlike tribe. The entire city gets ravaged, women get raped and captured, the children get abandoned, basically. They abandon the children. I remember that scene in the movie as all the young men are being carted away and all the women they're enslaved, they're passing this river, and then one of the younger kids shouts to them, I'll take care of them now. It's It's like a dozen kids, all they just leave them there, right in the middle of this jungle. It's just horrible, unimaginable. My mind just couldn't comprehend that when I was a kid. This is unimaginable at that time. This couldn't happen to me. That's one of the major themes at the start of the movie, and that's one of the points that Mel Gibson makes if you go into the special features. He says, this is America. This is our nation right now, And I missed my point, what I was going to make just now. You can see, yeah, fear. Fear was my point. At the start of the movie, the chief of the village says, fear, you can't let fear come in. Once fear comes in, I think that's the first line of the movie that they put on the screen, is the only way this can happen, that a nation can end like this, or a civilization can end, is you allow fear to get in, and then a civilization destroys itself from the inside out. And so the chieftain of the village says to his main son, who is the main character of the movie, he tells him, fear, you can't let fear get in, And so we see this young man, after the chief gets his throat cut, you see the young man and his brothers, his cousins, his family members, his friends, the entire village gets carted away to this centralized city in the empire. So they're enslaved and brought to this city. And one of the most amazing things I'll say about this movie that's very impressive, he doesn't say it, he shows it. He shows it through, you basically get a tour of advanced civilization of the time, advanced society, cultured, And so no word is spoken while these now newly enslaved people are brought into this massive city. And you get a tour of the whole city and of the industrialization, You see people working in these horrible working conditions where you see one of the workers bleeding out of his mouth and coughing. I don't know what he's dying of, but in those kind of working conditions, I don't know. But you see the horrible, it's just horrible, and it's all organized. There's millions of people, this massive city. It's another indicator of why we should spread out. These inside cities, these enclosed, that's what Satan wants, us to all just be enclosed in this little grave and we rot to death. But anyway, you see all of this. And this is the end of civilization, basically. This is the height of civilization, but you're also witnessing the end. And you see some of these incredibly amazing structures, these ziggurats. They still don't know how they constructed them historically. They think it's might have been some alien technology, or it could have just been so many human beings enslaved and worked to death to create these structures. I don't know. It doesn't seem physically possible, some of the architectural feats that they performed at that time, but that's a mystery. People still don't know. If you look at, go to Gen 6 Productions, look at some of Timothy Alberino's work. He talks a lot about that. He knows a lot. He talks about how these structures are impossible. We can't replicate that today. So anyway, they get taken through this city. They get sold through the slave market. You see people being traded. You see an older woman. That's one of the most important scenes in the movie. The older lady. She gets displayed in the slave market, just standing there. And then people are, can I get 5 gold coins or whatever the currency was? I don't remember what they said. And they, any bidders, any takers, any? Nope. Throw her out. She's of no value. You can go. Just an older lady, it's like in her 50s or maybe late 40s. She has no value to that world, that civilization at that time. No value whatsoever. You can't even have her raise the kids, do the cooking, do some cleaning. No, no value. Nobody wants her. Nobody bids on her. Nobody buys her. She has no value. What does that sound like today? Same thing. Same thing. That they push that older people have no value and they just want them to go die, basically. Sad. They have infinite value, really. But, yeah, the end of civilization. So anyway, she leaves. It's a touching scene with her son-in-law. They finally have a connection. And so the son-in-law and the son of the chief, the main character, and the rest of the warriors from this peace-loving tribe get sent further on into the city, into the center of the city, where there's this massive ziggurat, just these massive stairs going up to this top tower place where all the leaders of the village are. And what are they doing up there? They're practicing human sacrifice, which you could say that is the downfall, that is the ultimate end of civilization, is when they start practicing human sacrifice and these weird satanic rituals and that kind of thing. That's when the end is. It's right there. And so when they're about to execute the main character, they're about to rip his heart out and show it to him, and then throw it into a chalice, and then this little fat kid gets to eat his heart. That's what they're doing to all these warriors, these just simple people. They're just ripping their hearts out, showing their heart to them, saying a bunch of weird ritualistic satanic stuff, throwing it into a chalice, and then this little fat demon gets to eat his heart. These elites. Elites, there you go. The leaders of their nation are sitting there eating the literal hearts of the people. Ripping their hearts out and eating them. That's their diet. It's horrible, isn't it? Scary, too. Probably how I'm going to go. So anyway, that's when it happens, when an eclipse happens, and right before the main character gets his heart ripped out, an eclipse happens, and the moon blocks the sun for a minute, and so the people there take it as a sign that we're not going to rip this guy's heart out. So they take it as a sign that all the people from the rest of this tribe, they're tainted goods. So take them out, go have them executed. So then they take them out to this shooting range, this bow and arrow shooting range, and they start to execute the rest of those people from the tribe. Thankfully, the main character miraculously escapes. That's one of the themes of the movie, is a remnant will always survive. Amidst all this disaster, there's still going to be a remnant. That's what Mel Gibson was trying to say in those scenes, that even though all this horrible disaster is happening, civilization is literally killing itself. It's ripping its own heart out and eating it. It's even though all this bad stuff is happening, a remnant is still going to miraculously escape. And how he escapes, he's just barely, he has to run all the way home. And that was one thing that I forgot to mention, was that he hid his wife and his son and his wife is pregnant, about to give birth. It's the most horrible situation. He hid them in a hole before he was taken to this horrible city of evil. So he escapes this shooting range, and he starts running back home while the evil monster of the movie, this tyrant guy, chases him. Him and his dozen men, they chase him through this jungle all the way back to his village. And I know I've spoiled most of the movie already, but it's pretty good though. I have to say, I was pretty impressed, and I really appreciate Mel Gibson made The Passion, then he made Apocalypto, and both of those movies really, he's trying to speak to people. He's trying to say, hey, we need to change our ways, otherwise we're going the same route as this civilization. We're going to destroy ourselves. And that's ultimately his message in Apocalypto. And then his message also is that a remnant will always survive, even amidst all this horrible tribulation, horrible suffering that they suffer at the start of that movie. Just a peaceful little tribe, and they suffer so badly. But then a remnant is still going to make it out, and the one son does make it out, and he does rescue his wife and kids, And so ultimately it is a happy ending, but it's a very brutal movie. You have to have a very serious mind to watch it, and you also have to be a little familiar with the book of Revelation, and you have to be ready for what's to come. And I think that's what the movie was warning us about. And I think that goes hand in hand with studying the Bible. We need to be ready. We need to take note of our sins and how we're turning. As society continues to turn away from God, that's exactly where it leads to. Is to those satanic practices like Molech. Aren't they doing the same thing with Molech in this book? Aren't they sacrificing their children in a furnace? Similar principle. Ripping the heart out of a person and eating it. How disgusting. And then you could also substitute in abortion. How many children have we aborted? And what does it say at the beginning of Jeremiah? If I can find Jeremiah. There it is. I found Jeremiah. Amazing. What does it say at the beginning of Jeremiah related to children? Chapter 1, verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. It says it right there, I knew thee. Before he or even formed him in the belly, he knew him. And what are we doing to our children? We know they're children. We know that that's a soul in there, and yet we're aborting all of these babies. Millions and millions of babies. That's another scene that's really disturbing in the movie, as they show these fields of dead bodies with their heads ripped off. That's what they do after they rip the heart out, by the way. They chop their heads off in the movie. Sorry. Not to horrify you, but it is a very serious subject matter. Something we need to be aware of. And chopping the head off. What does it say will happen to people in the book of Revelation? What's going to happen to a lot of the saints? They're going to get their heads chopped off. Hopefully I don't get my heart ripped out and fed to some little demon fat kid. But, Very serious subject matter. I apologize if I horrified you, but I thought that was a very good movie, and I think it's worth watching. You have to have a serious mindset and be thinking about where our society is going and how civilization could end just like that because of our actions, because of our turning away from God. Turning away from God. That's what all that human sacrifice stuff does. It's just horrible beyond imagination. So I give the movie 4 Bibles out of 5. It wasn't perfect, but I think the subject matter was good enough to warrant most people's viewership. It's definitely not a kid's movie. Um, but I think Christians who are serious, who are seriously in their Bibles, and serious about current events, and serious about things to come, and being ready and being aware of what approaches, I think it's worth viewing and taking note of. So, not a perfect movie, but still very good nonetheless. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed day.